Anyone have anything else to bring before the Senate Committee of Business and Commerce?
Senator Frazier?
Yes?
If I may, Mr. Chair, make a closing comment.
I would love to close.
Thank you. We've heard a lot of information today, and it's similar to information that we've all heard in our Senate offices as well when we've been lobbied on this particular issue. And unfortunately, the arguments really present a false choice. There is no piece of legislation that is seeking to take away an alternative, an important alternative for families to receive lending in the state of Texas where that lending is needed. The problem with the state of affairs today in Texas is because we operate under a mechanism that never anticipated that payday lending would be an industry that would function within the credit service organization statute in the state of Texas, is that we've left our consumers completely unprotected. And unfortunately, these are the most desperate of people. And we've turned our back on them in the state of Texas. What we've said is that we're going to turn a blind eye to what's happening in that lending industry. We're going to turn a blind eye to the amount of fees that are being charged. And we're not going to listen to a very powerless group of people in terms of addressing what should be, for each and every one of us who represents people in this state, a very, very real concern. There is no doubt that before usury laws were enacted, people were taking out loans at usurious rates because they simply sometimes were forced to do that, because they simply sometimes had no choice to either put food on the table for their families or keep their lights on or keep their car in order to keep their job. And that is certainly no different in the payday lending industry in terms of the consumers who seek that service. But simply to say that the service is one that is utilized is not at all to disallow the argument that the service is taking advantage in a way that should trouble every single one of us in terms of the amount of fees that are being charged to the people who seek those services. It is absolutely the case that you can rattle off a list, as the gentleman did earlier, of a number of regulations that purportedly credit service organizations operate within. The most important piece that's missing in terms of that regulation, however, is the amount of the fee that can be charged and the amount of the interest that disguises itself as a fee. Because we don't collect data, because we have no one who oversees the industry, we don't even understand how bad the problem is. But to say that there is a consumer that needs the service and therefore we should turn a blind eye to what's happening in the industry is absolutely unacceptable. I think it is our job, it is absolutely our job in the financial arena to oversee in a responsible way that consumers are not being taken advantage of in the state of Texas. And when you look at the chart that was provided to us, I believe it was provided by Don Baylor, where we see that every other financial service industry in the state of Texas has oversight and regulation. Pawn shops, debt management, motor vehicle lenders, property tax lenders, and of course we know other financial institutions such as banks and credit unions operate within oversight. And we see that the only one that's left out are the credit service organizations that again are servicing the most desperate group of people. It is very disappointing to me, and it's interesting, Don Baylor started his comments by saying something about the low energy in the room today. And I've only been in this Senate for, I guess, about 3 months now. And that low energy is due to a hopelessness, a feeling that we are not going to do what's right on behalf of the consumers of the state of Texas, that we are not going to protect them, that we are not going to look out for them, because unfortunately, other very, very powerful voices have prevented us from acting on their behalf. I would like to say that for my own part, I will continue to work on this, whether it is this session or the next session or the next, until finally we do what we responsibly should be doing, and that is to look out for the people that we're tasked with representing. And I certainly hope that our bills will be moved for a vote. I would very much like for other Senate colleagues to have an opportunity to voice their opinion on this issue on the Senate floor, because I believe overall the sentiment is there to do something about this practice. And I ask that we make sure we take this to the floor in order to allow our colleagues to have their voices heard on this issue as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Davis, you have a very reasonable piece of legislation that I think should have been addressed many years ago, and I think it was addressed back in, prior to me even coming on the House floor in 1987. I think Craig Washington tried to do it in 85, 83, 85, and I pushed to work with you along those lines. You've got a good piece of legislation.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
This is the second session that I've come with these bills in this very week, one of the last weeks to hear Senate bills to talk about these issues, with the same 20 to 25 lobbyists sitting in the audience, that I hope the internet picks up so that the people back home can know exactly what's happening here. The 1,153% interest rate that's being charged on these loans is being used with these folks in the lobby to kill these bills so that they don't get up to the Senate floor, so that the people of Texas get a hearing and get their say on what's happening in their streets. When the interest rate in El Paso, Texas, and a guy in a sandwich board that I drive by every day to go to the airport is 1,100%, the people in my community want us to do something about that down here. And when Irving and Mesquite and Richardson have to take action, it is because of failed leadership in Austin, Texas. If you look around the country, there are 11 states that have taken a leadership role in taking care of predatory lending so that their families and their citizens do not get in this vicious cycle of debt. To not do that in the state of Texas and to cynically set these bills in May of every year so they don't get a thorough hearing and force us to try and amend bills that come across the floor so that we can get our 20 to 25 votes that I feel confident we have on the floor is failed leadership. And I hope someday soon the people watching this on the internet will know what's happening down here in Austin, Texas. Because that cycle of paying lobbyists to kill these bills, putting money in campaign cycles so that these issues are not heard, is not in the interest of the people we represent. And I'm going to do everything I can in the last 28 days of this session to hitch these bills onto something so that we can get the votes we know we have on the floor. These issues don't even get to the floor because they're blocked here by these lobbyists that represent these interests that are charging these outrageous predatory rates in the state of Texas. So I hope someday soon the people of the state of Texas get heard on these issues.
Anyone else have anything to bring before the City Committee on Business and Commerce? Now we will stand in recess.